In 2001, a drone pilot in Idaho captured footage that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about missing persons cases. What he found defied logic, challenged investigators, and left a family's fate hanging in the balance for over 2 decades. The Gutierrez family vanished without explanation during their 1988 camping trip. No bodies, no evidence, no leads. 13 years later, technology revealed their untouched campsite exactly as they left it, but the family was gone forever. Stay until the end, because what that drone captured will leave you questioning everything you think you know about disappearances. And make sure to tell me your theory in the comments. I've been investigating missing persons cases for over 15 years, and I can tell you that most disappearances follow predictable patterns. People leave digital footprints, physical evidence, witnesses remember something. But the Gutierrez case broke every rule I thought I understood about how people vanish. When I first heard about this family from Boise, Idaho, I assumed it would be another tragic but solvable mystery. I was wrong, in ways I never could have imagined. The summer of 1988 was particularly hot in Idaho. Miguel Gutierrez, a 34-year-old automotive engineer, had been planning this camping trip for months. He worked long hours at a local manufacturing plant, and his wife Carmen, 31, taught elementary school. They rarely took vacations, but their 2 children, Sophia, 8, and Diego, 11, had been begging for an adventure. Miguel had discovered a remote camping area near the Sawtooth National Forest, about 120 miles northeast of Boise. It wasn't an official campground, just a clearing beside a pristine alpine lake that locals called Hidden Mirror Lake. Carmen was initially hesitant about the location's isolation. There were no facilities, no other campers expected, and the nearest town, Ketchum, was over 30 miles away down a winding mountain road. But Miguel assured her it would be perfect for what he called real family time. They would fish, hike, tell stories around the campfire, and disconnect from the world for a full week. Carmen packed extra food, first aid supplies, and insisted they bring 2 flashlights and extra batteries. She had a teacher's instinct for preparation. The family loaded their 1985 Ford Bronco with camping gear, fishing equipment, and enough supplies for 7 days. Neighbors saw them drive away early Friday morning, July 15th. Miguel had taken the following week off work, and Carmen had arranged for her summer school classes to be covered. Sophia was excited about sleeping in a tent for the first time, while Diego proudly carried his new fishing rod. They stopped in Ketchum for ice and last-minute supplies, where a gas station attendant later remembered serving them. That was the last confirmed sighting of the Gutierrez family alive. Hidden Mirror Lake sat in a natural bowl surrounded by dense pine forest and granite cliffs. The access road was more of a dirt trail, requiring 4-wheel drive and careful navigation. Miguel had discovered the spot during a solo hunting trip 2 years earlier, and had been dreaming of bringing his family there ever since. The lake was spring-fed, crystal clear, and stocked with native trout. A small meadow on the south shore provided the perfect camping spot, with level ground, access to fresh water, and protection from prevailing winds. When the family failed to return on Sunday, July 24th, Miguel's brother Carlos drove to their house in Boise. Finding no one home and newspapers piled on the front porch, he contacted the police. Initially, officers suggested the family might have extended their vacation, but Carmen's school principal confirmed she was expected back for summer program planning on Monday. By Tuesday, search and rescue teams were mobilized. The challenge was immediate. Miguel had mentioned a lake near Ketchum to his brother, but Hidden Mirror Lake didn't appear on most local maps. Search teams spent 3 days combing official campgrounds and known recreational areas. A helicopter patrol finally spotted the distinctive blue Ford Bronco parked beside Hidden Mirror Lake on Thursday morning. What they found defied explanation. The vehicle was locked, with camping gear neatly arranged in the back. A tent was pitched perfectly in the meadow, guy lines tight, rain fly secure. A camp kitchen was set up with dishes drying on a makeshift rack. Fishing poles leaned against a fallen log. A campfire ring contained cold ashes and partially burned wood, as if the fire had been allowed to die naturally. Inside the tent, sleeping bags were laid out but appeared unused. Carmen's purse sat on a camp chair with her wallet, driver's license, and $127 in cash intact. Miguel's fishing license and truck keys were on the picnic table. Personal items, toothbrushes, soap, changes of clothes were organized as if the family planned to return at any moment. Most unsettling was Sophia's diary, left open to an entry dated July 23rd. Dad caught 3 fish today. Diego fell in the lake, but he's okay. Mom made s'mores. Tomorrow we're hiking to the waterfall. The absence of struggle signs baffled investigators. No footprints led away from the campsite except for normal family activity patterns around the immediate area. No damaged vegetation, no scattered belongings, no indication of wildlife encounters. The lake was deep but clear enough that divers could see the bottom in most areas. Extensive underwater searches revealed nothing. Bloodhounds tracked familiar scents in a small radius around the camp, but lost all trails at the lake's edge, as if the family had simply vanished into the water without leaving any physical evidence. Local law enforcement quickly escalated to state and federal levels. FBI missing persons specialists arrived within 48 hours, treating the scene as a potential kidnapping. The isolation of the location made this theory problematic. Anyone approaching the campsite would have left tire tracks on the soft dirt access road, but only the Gutierrez vehicle's tracks were found. The nearest hiking trail was over 2 miles away through dense forest. Investigators considered possibilities ranging from drowning to voluntary disappearance to something more sinister. Miguel's financial records showed no unusual activity, no debts, no associations with criminal elements. Carmen was described by colleagues as devoted to her children and job. Neither had any history of mental illness, substance abuse, or marital problems. Diego was an honor student, Sophia a happy child involved in dance classes. Extended family members insisted the Gutierrezes were stable, loving, and had been excited about their camping trip. There was simply no conventional explanation for how 4 people could disappear so completely from an isolated location without leaving any trace. The media attention was intense, but brief. Local television stations covered the story for 2 weeks, then moved on as investigators admitted having no leads. The campsite was processed as a crime scene for nearly a month, then released back to the elements. Miguel's brother Carlos hired private investigators who spent 6 months pursuing every conceivable angle. They interviewed hundreds of people, analyzed weather patterns, consulted with wilderness survival experts, and even explored theories involving unusual geological phenomena around the lake. As months passed without discoveries, the case gradually faded from active investigation status. The Ford Bronco was towed to an impound lot, then eventually released to Carlos, who couldn't bear to drive it. The camping gear was returned to family members who distributed items to charity, keeping only a few personal mementos. Carmen's school held a memorial service that fall, and Miguel's employer established a small scholarship fund for local students pursuing engineering degrees. By 1990, the Gutierrez disappearance had become one of those legendary unsolved cases that locals discussed in hushed tones. Camping and hiking in the area continued, but Hidden Mirror Lake acquired a reputation among outdoor enthusiasts. Some visitors reported feeling watched or experiencing unusual equipment malfunctions. Others claimed to hear voices calling across the water at dawn or dusk. These stories were generally dismissed as imagination fueled by knowledge of the tragedy, but they persisted. The years rolled on without answers. Carlos moved to California, unable to cope with constant reminders of his lost family. Extended relatives scattered across the country. The case files gathered dust in storage, occasionally reviewed by new detectives who invariably reached the same conclusion. The Gutierrez family had somehow vanished without leaving any actionable evidence. Cold case reviews in 1995 and 1999 produced no new leads or theories. In early 2001, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game was conducting a wildlife survey of remote lakes using newly acquired drone technology. The goal was to assess fish populations and habitat conditions in areas difficult to reach by traditional methods. Hidden Mirror Lake was selected as a survey location due to its pristine condition and the lack of recent human activity data. The department's senior biologist, Dr. Janet Morrison, was piloting the drone that captured footage that would change everything. Dr. Morrison launched her survey drone from a meadow about half a mile from Hidden Mirror Lake on a clear morning in April. The device was equipped with high-resolution cameras capable of capturing detailed images from several hundred feet altitude. Her mission was routine: photograph the lake's surface conditions, document any visible fish activity, and assess the surrounding ecosystem for signs of environmental changes. She expected to spend about an hour collecting data, then move on to the next survey location. As the drone approached Hidden Mirror Lake, Dr. Morrison noticed something unexpected on her monitor screen. Through the camera's zoom lens, she could clearly see what appeared to be camping equipment arranged in the meadow beside the lake. Initially, she assumed recent visitors had left gear behind, which would need to be reported to park services for cleanup. But as she maneuvered the drone for better angles, she realized the equipment looked oddly familiar and strangely pristine for abandoned camping gear. The drone's footage revealed a scene that seemed frozen in time. A tent stood perfectly erected, its fabric taut and colors unfaded despite 13 years of mountain weather. A camp kitchen area was arranged exactly as search teams had documented in 1988, with equipment positioned as if the campers had just stepped away momentarily. Most incredibly, everything appeared to be in mint condition. No rust, no weathering, no deterioration that should have occurred after more than a decade of exposure to Idaho's harsh mountain climate. Dr. Morrison immediately contacted her supervisor, who viewed the footage with disbelief. They reviewed archived photos from the original investigation, comparing them frame by frame with the drone's high-definition video. The match was perfect. Every item was in exactly the same position, but showing no signs of age or weather damage. The tent fabric looked new. The metal camp furniture showed no rust. Even paper items appeared crisp and clean. It was as if the campsite had been preserved in some kind of temporal bubble. Within hours, law enforcement agencies were mobilized again. FBI specialists, accompanied by the original investigation team members still available, flew to the location by helicopter. What they found on the ground was even more perplexing than the drone footage had suggested. The campsite wasn't just preserved, it was pristine. 13-year-old newspapers were perfectly readable, matches in a container were dry and functional, food packaging showed no signs of deterioration. Inside the tent, sleeping bags looked recently unpacked. Personal items were arranged exactly as documented in 1988 crime scene photos, but appeared brand new. Sophia's diary was open to the same page, her handwriting fresh and clear. Most mysteriously, a calendar hanging in the camp kitchen area showed the date as July 23, 1988. The last day the family was known to be alive. The pages hadn't been turned in 13 years, yet showed no aging, no insect damage, no weather effects. Environmental scientists were called in to study the phenomenon. The area's microclimate was analyzed, soil samples tested, atmospheric conditions measured. Nothing explained how camping equipment could remain in perfect condition through 13 Idaho winters, with their heavy snow loads, spring floods, summer heat, and autumn storms. The preservation was beyond anything explainable by normal environmental factors. More disturbing discoveries emerged as investigators expanded their search radius. Personal items belonging to the Gutierrez family were found scattered in a precise pattern, extending roughly 100 yards from the original campsite. Miguel's watch was discovered hanging from a tree branch, still running and showing the correct time, despite its 1980s battery technology. Carmen's hairbrush was found beside the lake shore, containing hair that DNA analysis confirmed as hers, but the hair showed no degradation typical of exposure to elements. The most unsettling find was Diego's fishing rod, discovered standing upright in the lake about 30 feet from shore. The line was cast into the water as if he had been fishing when something interrupted him, but the rod's fiberglass construction should have deteriorated years earlier, and the fishing line should have broken or rotted away. Instead, everything remained functional and appeared recently used. Even more puzzling, when investigators reeled in the line, they found a fresh fish on the hook, a trout that appeared to have been caught moments earlier. As news of the discoveries spread, the case attracted national attention. Paranormal investigators, government scientists, and media crews descended on Hidden Mirror Lake. Theories ranged from temporal anomalies to military experiments to supernatural preservation. None adequately explained how a family could vanish completely while their belongings remained frozen in time for 13 years. The case became a touchstone for discussions about unsolved mysteries and the limits of scientific understanding. Local Native American elders were consulted about traditional knowledge regarding the area. Several mentioned legends about Hidden Mirror Lake being a place where time moves differently, and warned against camping there during certain celestial conditions. These stories had been dismissed as folklore in 1988, but investigators now listened with new interest. The lake's name itself came from local beliefs that it served as a portal or gateway, reflecting not just images, but somehow trapping souls or consciousness. Dr. Morrison's drone footage was analyzed by video experts and physicists. No evidence of tampering or digital manipulation was found. The images were authentic, captured in real time, showing what appeared to be an impossible preservation of a decade-old crime scene. Multiple drones from different agencies confirmed the findings. Satellite imagery was reviewed, revealing that the campsite had been visible from space throughout the intervening years, consistently showing the same preserved arrangement. The FBI reopened the Gutierrez case as an active investigation, but faced the same fundamental problem that had stymied investigators 13 years earlier: perfect preservation of evidence without any explanation for the family's disappearance. If anything, the new discoveries made the case more mysterious. How could camping gear survive 13 years of mountain weather without aging, while 4 human beings vanished without leaving any trace beyond their perfectly preserved belongings? Extensive searches were conducted throughout 2001 and 2002, using ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, sonar mapping of the lake, and excavation of promising locations. Hundreds of volunteers and professionals combed the area. Every cave, crevice, and hiding place within miles was explored. Nothing was found. The Gutierrez family remained as vanished as they had been in 1988, but now their absence was accompanied by the impossible preservation of their material presence. The case remains officially unsolved to this day. Hidden Mirror Lake has been closed to public access, designated as a research site where scientists continue studying the preservation phenomenon. No satisfactory explanation has emerged for either the family's disappearance or the temporal anomaly affecting their belongings. Periodic checks show the campsite maintaining its 1988 appearance, as if time stopped at that location on July 23rd of that year. What happened to the Gutierrez family? Did they encounter something at Hidden Mirror Lake that exists outside our understanding of physical reality? Were they victims of an unknown natural phenomenon, government experiment, or something beyond current scientific knowledge? Their perfectly preserved campsite continues to wait for their return, frozen in time, keeping secrets that may never be revealed. The drone footage that Dr. Morrison captured that April morning in 2001 remains some of the most compelling evidence ever recorded of an unexplained disappearance. 4 people vanished completely, but their world remained exactly as they left it, preserved in impossible perfection. 13 years of mountain weather couldn't touch their belongings, but whatever took the Gutierrez family left no trace that modern science can detect or explain. In the months following the drone discovery, I became personally involved with the Gutierrez investigation. As a specialist in anomalous disappearances, I was brought in by the FBI to provide an independent analysis of what they were calling the most perplexing missing persons case in modern American history. Nothing in my 15 years of experience had prepared me for what I would encounter at Hidden Mirror Lake. The preserved campsite was just the beginning of a mystery that would challenge everything I thought I understood about the nature of reality itself. My first visit to the site in late 2001 left me speechless. Standing in that meadow, surrounded by the impossible preservation of a 13-year-old crime scene, I felt as though I had stepped into a photograph. The air itself seemed different, thicker somehow, with a quality that made sounds carry strangely. My digital camera malfunctioned repeatedly, producing images with unexplained distortions and light patterns that didn't correspond to what I observed with my naked eye. Electronic equipment seemed to struggle in the immediate vicinity of the campsite, as if some unknown force interfered with normal electromagnetic function. I spent 3 days documenting every detail, comparing current conditions with the extensive photographic record from 1988. The preservation was absolutely perfect. I found Miguel's coffee cup sitting on the camp table, still containing what appeared to be fresh coffee, though laboratory analysis later revealed the liquid had somehow maintained its molecular structure without decomposition for over a decade. Carmen's magazine lay open to an article about summer vacation activities, the pages crisp and readable, as if purchased that morning. Even more unsettling, the magazine's subscription label showed an expiration date of December 1988, yet the publication showed no signs of aging. During my second night at the site, I experienced something that convinced me the Gutierrez case involved forces beyond conventional understanding. Around 3 a.m., I was awakened by the sound of children's laughter coming from the direction of the lake. I grabbed my flashlight and recorder, but as I approached the water's edge, the sounds faded. My audio equipment had captured nothing but ambient forest noise, yet I had clearly heard Sofia and Diego playing, their voices carrying the same joy and innocence described by neighbors who knew them in 1988. The experience was so vivid that I found myself calling out their names, hoping for a response that never came. Weather monitoring equipment installed around the campsite revealed extraordinary anomalies. Temperature readings within a 50-foot radius of the tent consistently registered exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of external conditions. During a snowstorm in December 2001, the campsite remained clear while snow accumulated normally just beyond its invisible boundaries. Barometric pressure readings fluctuated wildly without correlation to regional weather patterns. Most significantly, chronometers placed within the preservation zone began displaying irregular time measurements, sometimes running slow, sometimes fast, as if temporal flow itself was disrupted. I interviewed Dr. Morrison extensively about her original drone flight. She revealed details that hadn't been included in official reports, concerned they would seem too fantastic for credibility. During her aerial survey, she had captured footage of what appeared to be human figures moving around the campsite. The images were brief and unclear, but enhancement suggested 4 people engaged in normal camping activities. When she reviewed the footage immediately after landing, however, the human figures had vanished, leaving only the empty but perfectly preserved campsite. The raw video files from her drone's memory showed the same discrepancy. Figures visible during initial playback, but absent from later viewings of identical footage. Scientific teams from 3 universities established a research station near Hidden Mirror Lake in early 2002. Their equipment detected unusual electromagnetic signatures emanating from the lake itself. Sonar mapping revealed the lake's depth was inconsistent, sometimes measuring 300 feet, other times showing depths of over 1,000 feet in the same location. Core samples from the lake bottom contained sediment layers that defied geological explanation, including materials that shouldn't exist in Idaho's mineral composition. Most puzzling were organic compounds that matched DNA profiles of the Gutierrez family, despite no bodies ever being discovered. Dr. Patricia Chen, a quantum physicist from Stanford, proposed the most compelling scientific theory I encountered. She suggested that Hidden Mirror Lake might be experiencing what she termed temporal displacement, a theoretical condition where linear time becomes distorted by unknown energy sources. According to her calculations, the campsite might exist in a kind of temporal bubble, experiencing time at a drastically different rate than the surrounding environment. This could explain both the preservation phenomenon and the family's disappearance, if they had somehow become trapped within an accelerated or decelerated time stream. To test Dr. Chen's theory, researchers introduced controlled materials into the preservation zone. Items placed within the campsite's boundaries exhibited the same temporal suspension as the original Gutierrez belongings. Fresh fruit remained perfectly ripe. Newspapers stayed crisp. Even living plants showed no growth or decay. However, these effects only occurred with items placed in specific locations corresponding to where family belongings had been found. The phenomenon seemed tied not just to the area, but to the exact positions the Gutierrez family had occupied during their final days. More disturbing discoveries emerged as investigation expanded. Trail cameras positioned around the lake captured images that defied explanation. Photographs taken during daylight hours sometimes showed the campsite occupied by shadowy figures engaged in camping activities. The figures appeared translucent, visible enough to suggest human forms, but lacking clear definition. Motion sensors triggered recordings of footsteps and voices, but no physical presence could be detected. These phantom activities followed the same routine: morning fishing, afternoon hiking, evening campfires, exactly matching the pattern described in Sophia's diary entries. Local wildlife behavior around Hidden Mirror Lake became increasingly abnormal. Animals avoided the immediate vicinity of the campsite, with GPS tracking showing elk, deer, and smaller mammals detouring around the area in precise patterns. Migratory birds altered their flight paths to avoid the lake's airspace. Even insects seemed affected. Researchers found dead bees and butterflies arranged in geometric patterns around the campsite's perimeter, as if they had encountered some invisible barrier that proved fatal. The ecological disruption extended underwater, where fish populations mysteriously fluctuated between abundance and complete absence. I spent considerable time studying the Native American legends Dr. Morrison had mentioned. Conversations with tribal elders revealed a rich oral tradition surrounding Hidden Mirror Lake that painted it as a place of profound spiritual significance and danger. According to Shoshone stories passed down through generations, the lake served as a thin place where the boundaries between worlds became permeable. Certain astronomical conditions, particularly during summer solstices, could open doorways to other dimensions or time periods. The elders warned that families who camped there during these vulnerable moments might step sideways into alternate realities. The timing of the Gutierrez disappearance aligned perfectly with these traditional warnings. July 23, 1988, coincided with specific celestial events that tribal astronomy identified as particularly dangerous for the lake's spiritual activity. A rare planetary alignment, combined with solar flare activity recorded by NASA, had created conditions the elders described as when the mirror shows truth instead of reflection. They claimed such events occurred roughly every 13 years, exactly matching the interval between the family's disappearance and the drone discovery. Carlos Gutierrez, Miguel's brother, agreed to visit the site with me in spring 2002. He had avoided the location since the original investigation, unable to cope with the memories it evoked. Standing beside his brother's perfectly preserved campsite, Carlos broke down completely. But his emotional response triggered something extraordinary. For approximately 10 minutes, while Carlos grieved openly, the entire campsite became occupied by translucent figures that multiple witnesses observed and recorded. Miguel, Carmen, Sofia, and Diego appeared engaged in their normal camping routine, seemingly unaware of our presence. The apparitions were visible, but not quite solid, like projections overlaid on physical reality. Miguel could be seen checking fishing equipment, Carmen organizing camp supplies, the children playing near the lakeshore. Their movements matched activities described in the investigation files, as if we were witnessing a replay of their final days. Carlos spoke to them directly, calling their names, pleading for responses. The figures showed no awareness of his presence, continuing their routine as if existing in a separate temporal dimension. When Carlos's emotional intensity subsided, the apparitions faded back into invisibility. Video analysis of the apparition event revealed something that challenged our understanding of consciousness and reality. Enhanced footage showed that the ghostly figures cast shadows and created ripples when touching water, suggesting they possessed some form of physical substance despite their translucent appearance. Audio recording captured faint conversations, matching the family's known speech patterns and voices. Most significantly, the apparitions aged in real time during our observation period. Sofia and Diego appeared slightly older in later footage than in initial images, as if they continued developing somewhere beyond normal reality. Attempts to interact directly with the preservation phenomenon produced mixed and often dangerous results. Research assistants who spent extended time within the campsite's boundaries reported experiencing temporal displacement symptoms, memories of events that hadn't occurred, aging inconsistencies, and difficulty maintaining awareness of current time periods. 2 researchers had to be removed from the site after showing signs of psychological integration with 1988 timeframes, speaking as if they were contemporary with the Gutierrez family and showing no recognition of post-1988 events or people. The case attracted attention from government agencies beyond law enforcement. Military scientific divisions became interested in the temporal displacement properties, seeing potential applications for defensive or research purposes. However, attempts to weaponize or harness the phenomenon proved unsuccessful and dangerous. Equipment brought into the preservation zone either malfunctioned completely or became permanently trapped in temporal suspension. 3 unmanned vehicles sent into the lake's depths never returned, and remote monitoring suggested they continued operating in some inaccessible dimension. By 2003, Hidden Mirror Lake had become the most studied anomalous location in North America. Research teams from 12 countries established monitoring stations to study what became known as the Gutierrez temporal anomaly. The site was classified at the highest levels of scientific and national security interest. Yet despite unprecedented resources and attention, the fundamental questions remained unanswered. Where had the family gone? How could their belongings exist in temporal suspension? What force or phenomenon had created conditions that defied known physics and challenged our understanding of reality itself? The most recent developments in the case occurred in 2004, when satellite imagery detected structural changes around Hidden Mirror Lake. The campsite's preservation zone had begun expanding, slowly but measurably encompassing a larger area each month. Items placed near but outside the original boundaries gradually became affected by the temporal suspension. Trees within the expanding zone stopped growing, their leaves remaining green regardless of season. The lake itself began showing signs of dimensional instability, with depth measurements varying not just between readings, but during single continuous surveys. What terrifies me most about the Gutierrez case isn't just the family's unexplained disappearance. It's the growing evidence that whatever took them is still active and expanding its influence. The preserved campsite isn't just a memorial to a missing family. It's a window into forces that operate beyond human understanding. Each day that passes brings new questions about the nature of time, consciousness, and reality itself. The Gutierrez family may have been the first to encounter something at Hidden Mirror Lake, but all evidence suggests they won't be the last. Standing in that impossible meadow, surrounded by 13-year-old camping gear that looks brand new, listening for voices that might never answer, I'm forced to confront the possibility that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved by human minds. The Gutierrez family stepped into something that exists outside our normal experience of existence. Whether they're lost in time, trapped in another dimension, or experiencing reality in ways we can't comprehend, their story challenges everything we think we know about the world we live in.